Okay, this is where this is the theme stated, like it does say on the Save the Cat sheet beats. Sheet beats? Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Just another struggling writer. The beleaguered author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. Well, today is the start of another writing vlog, and I had totally intended to start this a couple of days ago, but it just didn't work out. Thursday ended up being kind of a fraught day for me, parenting-wise, and then Friday evening I had my nephew over for a sleepover for the first time, and that was really fun. And then Saturday I just spent most of the day reading and playing catch-up, and I have my notebook out, but I didn't really get anything done. Which is not to say that I haven't really been thinking about my project. I have. That's what I wanted to drop in and talk to you guys about today. As I mentioned all last month, I am finally moving out of the world building phase and into the outlining stage. But for me, that also comes in a number of steps. I just don't go straight into the detailed outline. I'm starting with more or less a beat sheet, not like the stereotypical Save the Cat beat sheet, but something similar where I write out to myself the major moments when, the call to action, when the main character steps into this new world, the midpoint, all of that. I'm just writing out to myself so I can see that the story is flowing well from point A, where we first opened the book, to the end. I did start doing that on Thursday very, very briefly, but I got stuck on a moment where I realized I'm not really sure what the theme is. And this may just be one of my writing red flags that I just don't know. I don't really think about what my theme is at all. I just write the story. And I wondered to myself if that's something I need to be thinking more deeply about. Is that one of the reasons I've struggled so long to write a cohesive, completed draft, because I haven't thought more deeply about the actual elements. If the writing and the plot and the characters are like the topmost layer, then the themes, the growth that the characters go on and all of that is underneath. I wonder if I'm not being successful because I don't really think about that bottom layer stuff too deeply. I just write the story that as it comes. So I have been kind of ruminating on that since Thursday. It is now Sunday afternoon. And wondering to myself if I need to pin a theme down. Is it a character theme, or is it a world theme, or if it's just like a sort of a general message? I'm not really sure. I guess I just don't think on that level. And I don't know if that makes me a good or bad writer, or if something like that is supposed to just naturally develop as I'm writing, or if I do need to be highlighting, okay, this is where this is the theme stated, like it does say on the Save the Cat sheet beats. Sheet beats? Beat sheets. That's kind of what I've been ruminating on and thinking deeply about. I am planning on getting an actual start on writing all of these elements out, actually on paper, probably tomorrow. My day today is so full of stuff that I just don't see writing happening today. But as long as I'm thinking deeply about it, I think I can say that counts. I just wonder, do other writers, when they set out to write a story, think about this kind of stuff? This is the theme of the book. For me, it's more about plot. But also, I know that my first drafts tend to be so plot driven that the drafts are very thin, because I'm just hurtling along at the plot, the railroad of the plot, without taking time to stop and to cover descriptions or delve really deeply into characters outside of the main character and develop B plots and all of that. That's just how my first drafts are. They're ways for me to get to the end and make sure that there is a cohesive through line all the way through that I can write around and later fluff up in later drafts. So this is just me questioning my process and asking myself, does that process even work? Or is it just that I haven't been sufficiently driven to finish a draft? That is the reason that drafts haven't been done. I don't know. I guess I'll find out. The other thing I wanted to mention was that lately Like the last week or so, I have been so creatively like stimulated. I've been getting so many ideas for new like projects down the line. Of course, I'm not going to stop this one. These are just like very, very basic ideas in their infancy. I had mentioned maybe last week or the week before that I had like come up with an idea about a woman finding a stone on the side of the road and her memory's gone and there's a dead body and she's got this stone with a rune on it. That's going in my pocket for something I can develop later. But then over the last like 3 or 4 days, I've also come up with 2 new ideas. One is boils down to just magical tattoos. And then another idea, which I had recently, which was like a hostel library. And the librarian is more like a zookeeper or like a containment person than, anyway, I'm sure there are books like that out there already for both of those things, but I'm kind of like I said, putting those in my pocket to see if I could come up with any new fresh takes on those as well. So I know that my mind is feeling creative right now. I know that it's fertile ground. And so it's on me to take advantage of it at this point and not let excuses pile up like I am today. Unfortunately, I just can't do it today. I've got to finish a book. I've got to edit a video. I've got to finish my homework. I've got to take my kids to get school supplies. I've got to clean my house. It's just, Sundays are hard this Sunday is particularly hard. But while there are excuses today, tomorrow, I can't let there be any excuses. I've got to take advantage of this creative fertility while it lasts. So I plan on speaking with you guys tomorrow once I have. The other thing about on Friday especially was I accidentally left my notebook at home. So I did take a little bit of notes in my journal, which I carry with me everywhere. But I was feeling like a little grumpus that I completely forgot to bring my notebook to work with me. And I usually work on it on my breaks. And so I couldn't because I didn't have my notebook. But anyway, excuses, I know. Anyway, that is it for today. I will check back in with you tomorrow when I have an update on where I am at with that kind of beat progression. Hello everyone, checking in with a quick writing update. Very quick because my battery is about to die. So I forgot my notebook again today, so I didn't have it available to work with. But I did do some thinking and some brainstorming in my journal about how to proceed because I realized today that I have the first act pretty well figured out because I've more or less already written it in previous attempts at drafting the story. And it feels pretty well defined with some minor tweaks based on the world building ideas I've come up with over the last 2 months. But as we move into the second act, it gets a little bit more nebulous. And there are probably 8 or 10 major points that I want to hit, but I realized today they could actually be done in a couple of different ways at different times and trigger, each other at different points and still reach the same break into the third act. That was really interesting because it usually doesn't work for me like that. Usually it's very, very linear. But the middle of this book in particular has always been kind of in flux because I know the midpoint and I know the climax, and I knew some beats in there that I wanted to hit, but I didn't really realize until I've done all this world building, answered that mystery I was talking about a few weeks ago, that I realized that I could actually do this in a couple of different ways. So what I'm gonna do, I think, tomorrow, now that I've put my notebook in my purse, and we'll have it for sure tomorrow, and I can work on it on my lunch like I normally do. I think what I'm going to do is just write out a mini outline for the second act and do it in the 2 or 3 ways that it could be done and see what feels like it makes the most sense. Because it's possible that I was just seeing, I was seeing too much of a 30,000 foot view and not in the weeds and realizing that maybe path A doesn't make sense or it leads into a corner or whatever. So I think if I get granular with it and actually do kind of a mini outline, but just for the second act, and kind of path out these different ways I can get to the climax, I think I'll know for sure which one feels like it makes the most sense and is the most accurate for the story. But that was really interesting. I've never had that happen before because, like I said, most of the time I write very linearly. I can't even write a scene out of order because I have to know what preceded it. I have to know what information was revealed in the previous scene. I have to know if the characters did anything that changed the dynamics. You know, characters are really hard to plot. I try to plot the story itself, but characters tend to have a mind of their own. Even as a staunch planner, that does bear out. It's never happened to me before where I've had all these puzzle pieces that could, in theory, be fitted together in different ways. It's interesting. But I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to play with it tomorrow. I'm going to try and kind of sort out my feelings on how I want it to be done. And I'll let you know how it goes. So I've got to get going because now my battery is dying for sure. But that is my update today. And I look forward to chatting with you tomorrow. Hey everyone, time for a quick writing update. Yesterday when we spoke, I had mentioned that I was thinking a lot about the sequence of events that makes up the second act of this book because there are a couple of different configurations I can put Act 2 in. I can have certain events happen at the exact midpoint, some later on towards the end of Act 2, and just rearrange some of these things. And so what I wanted to do today was sit down and kind of make two different skeletons of Act 2 in these two different paths to kind of see what shakes out from those paths and kind of feel out which one is more correct. And that's what I did. It actually came pretty easily. I wrote out Path A and Path B. And what I discovered is Path A, the character's dark night that comes at the end of Act 2 towards the beginning of Act 3 is more driven by fear of failure, fear of what could happen to her, fear of the unknown. And in Path B, that reticence comes from anger. She's angry at being misled. She's angry at being used. She's angry with all the people around her for obfuscating facts from her. And so she's just taking a step back just to kind of wrest back some control. Unfortunately, that puts her kind of in a position where she's back at the point where she started at the beginning of the story. Both of these options have merit. I think either one of them I can take into Act 3, but the beginning of Act 3 is identical either way. I just have to figure out which of these two paths, A, is accurate for the character, and B, which is going to generate more threads for the series at large and later books. Because I don't know. I looked over it pretty deeply today and kicked it back and forth in my head all day, and I really just don't know what the answer is. So I'm gonna have to sleep on it. And kind of make a gut decision. I guess I could technically leave it off until I'm in the draft and just make two separate outlines, one with Path A and one with Path B. I'm going to try and figure it out before then, but that is an option because, like I said, the sequence of events, the main beats are all in there, just in different order. And so I could, in theory, do two separate outlines. I'm currently leaning more towards Path B. It feels a little bit more true to the character, and it does feel a little bit more true to some of the themes that I am trying to sow in the book and in the series at large. Path A also makes a lot of sense too. I don't know. I really don't know. It's hard. This is tough. I've never had this before. Usually it just goes from, it just flows really linearly and like it just makes sense to me either way or all the way through. Not so this time. This time I could legitimately see a case for both. And that's really interesting. It's really fascinating. I'm so glad that I'm doing this exercise. And I'm so glad that I took time to puzzle out Act 2 in this detail. Both times I tried drafting the story before, I had only really outlined in my head the first act and only had kind of a vague idea of the main points that I wanted to hit for Act 2 and 3. And that wouldn't have worked here. And I'm realizing now that was never going to work because of this fork in the road that I could take. It was a productive day. Unfortunately, I didn't come up with an answer, but at least I figured out kind of the underlying character feelings that are at play in both. So, like I said, I'm going to sleep on it. I'm going to think really deeply about it and make my decision hopefully soon. But I am going to leave that option on the table to just leave it live for right now and continue with my outlining process and see if one elevates itself over the other. And if not, then just do 2 outlines with 2 different act twos. And that's pretty much it for today, except I wanted to show you these 2 new notebooks I got at the store the other day when I was taking my kids to do school supply shopping. They are Squishmallow based. Oh my god, it is so cute. There were a couple of others, but they weren't quite as cute as these. But oh my gosh, I am obsessed. And I love them so much that yesterday when I forgot my notebook at home, I was very tempted to just start the outlining brainstorming process in one of these guys. The reason I didn't is because it just there's so much left in the current notebook that I'm using, and it wouldn't make sense to do all of my brainstorming and world building in one notebook and then my outline in another when there's all this room left. I mean, if I had filled the notebook with world building notes, that would make sense, but I didn't. So there's all this room left. So I held off. I don't know what I'm going to do with these guys, because I still haven't decided whether or not I'm going to draft this project longhand or on my computer yet. My initial just knee-jerk reaction is longhand. I love writing longhand. It's it's creatively stimulating for me, but it does take like 3 times as long, and it really hurts my hand. And I need, all kinds of different like notebooks and supplies for it. I have completed one draft longhand before, and it is the only draft I've ever finished. So there is precedence. It just takes a lot of dedication to the bit. These are only 80 pages each, so I don't even know that I could finish a draft in these 2. And then I'd have to go back and find a third so it would match the theme. So maybe I won't. I don't know, but I love them. I especially love the fox. Oh my gosh. We love Squishmallows in this house. I have several. Maybe I'll show them to you sometime. But anyway, that is my writing update for the day. I will check in with you tomorrow. I don't really have any specific plans. I'm hoping I'm going to wake up with a gut feeling on where to go with that Act 2 decision. If not, I'm just going to start working on Act 3, kind of mapping out the specifics of it. Like I said, I know the main beats, and Act 3 typically isn't very dense anyway. It's just the climax and the denouement. That's going to be my goal for tomorrow. And if that's the case, if I can finish that tomorrow, then I'll have basically a very bare bones skeleton beat by beat outline done, and then I can start moving into the detailed outline. That's not true. I think Act 2 still does need a little bit of beefing up. I've got the main beats, but I don't think it's quite as meaty as it needs to be. But anyway, that's a problem for tomorrow or Thursday. Anyway, I'm gonna go crawl into my bed now with my heating pad and a book, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Hey everyone, just checking in with a quick writing update. I actually didn't do that much writing today. I got severely sidetracked by this James Kirk, Mr. Spock is definitely canon video, which I will link right here, which is 2 hours long and completely consumed me. Fortunately, I guess, it did make me think a little bit about my own writing and whether or not I am appropriately developing other side plots, because I don't think that I am. And that's not a super big surprise to me. I have always been very, very A-plot focused. I just railroad myself through the plot or through, a draft just to get the plot down. And I don't do a lot of focus on anything else. That includes character description, setting description, and I guess side plots. I do have some threads to kind of weave in, such as that mystery that we saw that I figured out in my head a couple weeks ago. That is something I do intend to make part of this story. But in terms of like actual side plots, I feel like I'm kind of weak in that area. I don't really know what to do about that either. It's possible that those are things that'll just develop as I go, or as I get further into the weeds and make new discoveries and new realizations. I do generate more ideas the deeper into it I go. But yeah, it was just a little bit of a kind of a discouraging realization that yes, it is good that I'm into the outlining stage and I've done all this work and I feel more prepared than ever. But I still have deficiencies as a writer. I know that. I have long suspected it comes from my history as a fan fiction writer, where in theory, your audience is already familiar with the characters and the setting. And even if you're writing like an AU fic, the setting is kind of second fiddle to the story you're telling in it. I spent, more than a decade doing that kind of writing. And I think it really atrophied my ability to write description and to be imaginative when it comes to setting and dense plot work where there are side stories that need to be teased and developed and wrapped up. But it is what it is. I have to learn, and there is no way to learn but to do it. So while I'm grateful and I'm glad that I have figured out some things about my story, it's pretty clear to me that there's still a great deal of progress to be made. In that same vein, I haven't completely decided which Act 2 path I want to take. I am more strongly leaning towards path B, which is the one where my character is more motivated by anger and kind of defiance and not wanting to be a part of this organization. I feel that is more true to her. So I think, just sitting here thinking about it, I think I'm going to take that approach. And now that I have it in my head, I'm going to more firmly flesh it out and try and inject some of those B plots, because I have to. I can't just tell a one-track story. It'll just, first of all, it wouldn't be a full novel. It would be very, very short, which isn't a problem. I wrote novellas semi-professionally for about 2 years a while back. So not a problem for sure, just not what I want for this particular story. So my goal next week, I think, is going to be finishing that story skeleton, Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and put it all together. And then really start deeply analyzing the gaps, because I will tell you that Act 2 does not have nearly as much in it to support it being the chunkiest part of the book. Traditionally, you want Act 1 to be about 20% and Act 3 to be about 15%, and everything else is Act 2. And I do think that I don't have enough beats or enough moments to carry that entire middle part of the book. So it's pretty clear that there's some shoring up to do. And to do that, I need to kind of analyze what my story is so far, look at it as a completed whole or as a skeleton, and figure out where meat needs to be packed onto the bones. And that, I feel, is for sure is mostly going to be kind of at the beginning of Act 2, where, in fact, that is where it is. It's right there at the beginning of Act 2, because right there at the beginning is really just like, main character has stepped into this new world and she's learning all of these things. And that's about it. So I need to fill in that section with side story plots and meeting new characters and developing relationships with these people that she's meeting, even if it's not a super strong connection, things that'll carry over into the sequels. So I guess that's really going to be my focus for the next couple of days and into the following and into next week. But that is for next week's vlog, so I will leave you with that. Thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate it. In my next video, I will have a reading vlog for you, and I have been doing a ton of reading lately. I really do feel like I have finally snapped out of that horrible reading slump, so I hope you look forward to it, and I will see you then. Bye.